propaganda does not deceive people. It merely helps them to deceive themselves. Eric Hoffer. When you look at the world today, it feels like everyone is more divided than ever. You scroll social media, turn on your TV, or you just sit at a table with friends, and the noise creates a fog so thick that you can cut it. It's like there's a coordinated effort to make us angry, divided, and completely distracted. We'll blame and we'll complain about the algorithms, the media outlets, and the politicians for poisoning the well. And honestly, it's not necessarily wrong to think that. It's an exhausting environment to navigate. But let's stop looking at the outside for a minute. Let's look inside ourselves. Most of us think propaganda only works on weak-minded people. That's the first lie propaganda convinces you to believe. We love to talk about how easily manipulated the public is, how everyone else is brainwashed by the hype. But the minute you feel that surge of outrage from a headline, you aren't an observer anymore. You're a participant. Whereas the dangerous part isn't when the information is obviously false, because most of us can spot that. The dangerous part is when something feels so true that you stop asking questions. And if we're being honest, many of us don't really want truth anymore. We want reinforcement. We want confirmation. We want someone to tell us the people we dislike are wrong and the people we agree with are right. That's where propaganda gets its power. Because if your emotions can be predicted, triggered, and directed by strangers who profit from your attention, then someone else may be doing more thinking for you than you'd like to admit. And it's funny how confident we are in our own bubble of beliefs. If you ask anyone on the street, they'll tell you that the media is corrupt. Social media is a circus. And everyone is entirely too easily controlled. But if you ask that same person if they're being manipulated, they'll look at you like you're crazy. We each have this psychological blind spot where we genuinely believe that propaganda only works on the people we disagree with. We see that group of people as an easily brainwashed mass of followers, while we view ourselves as this perfectly objective, deeply analytical thinker who sees right through that garbage. And it's a comforting position to take, but it's also a lie. That belief, that one where everyone else is vulnerable but you, because you've somehow evolved past it, is actually a trapdoor. The moment you decide you're too smart to be fooled is the same moment you become the easiest target in the room. Because when you believe that you're immune, you stop questioning your own thoughts. You don't double check your reactions. You just assume that if a piece of information makes you feel justified, or if it validates what you already think about the subject, it must be the objective truth. But true discipline doesn't allow for that kind of arrogance. If you're genuinely committed to self-leadership, you have to start with the premise that you are just as susceptible to the narrative as anyone else. You have to be willing to look at your own convictions with a significant amount of skepticism. If you don't, you aren't actually leading yourself at all. You're just blindly following a script that someone else wrote for you, all while celebrating how independent you think you are. It's time to stop looking down at how easily others are manipulated and start looking inward at where you're letting your own guard down. Think about the last time you read something that made you angry or annoyed, and your immediate instinct was, "I knew it." What'd you do next? If you're like most of us, you probably went looking for more verification. Typed a few words into a search bar, scanned a couple of articles, looked at a few comments, all just to back up what you were feeling. We convince ourselves that we do our own research, and it feels like the smart, responsible thing to do. We believe that we're being thorough, searching for the truth and refusing to be spoon-fed by mainstream narratives. But if we're being honest, that's not research. It's just a hunt for confirmation. When we go looking for information with our minds already made up, we aren't seeking the truth. We're just seeking validation. We look for the data points that support our anger, and we completely ignore the evidence that contradicts it. That's our blind spot, because it mimics the process of learning without actually requiring any real work. You get the false sense of satisfaction. It's the belief that you're right without having to risk being wrong. On the other hand, real mental toughness means you don't look for compliance. You look for friction. It means that when you hold a deep conviction, your first instinct should be to try to dispute it. You have to actively search for the poignant and intelligent arguments against your position. Because if your beliefs can't survive a true challenge from the other side, then they aren't actually your beliefs. They're just pacifiers you're clinging to. Real progress only happens when you stop managing your comfort and start managing your blind spots. And every one of us can look back at history and think of propaganda as this heavy-handed government operation filled with posters and speeches. But that's not how it works anymore. Today, it's integrated directly into the routines of our daily lives. Through the powerful computers we carry in our pockets. We each have to realize that the digital platforms we use to consume information are not public utilities built for truth. They're businesses built for attention. And the quickest, most efficient way to capture human attention isn't through a balance or nuance. It's through outrage and validation. The algorithms guiding your feed don't care if a story is accurate, helpful, or constructive to your personal growth. The algorithm only cares if it keeps your eyes on the screen for another 30 seconds. It feeds you a steady, customized diet of exactly what moves your needle, nudging and pushing you further into a corner where your worst assumptions about what's going on in the world are constantly reinforced. You're fed an engineered reality that's specifically designed to keep you emotionally charged, because an emotionally charged user is a highly engaged user. And when you understand this, you start to realize that constant consumption is a liability for you. If you just sit back and let the machine deliver your daily reality, you're letting an equation optimize your mood and focus for its own profit. It's an incredible but subtle form of control because it feels completely generic and non-threatening. You think you're just staying informed, but you're actually being conditioned to react. Breaking out of that loop requires a deliberate level of friction. It means that recognizing the noise coming at you isn't an accident. It's a business model. And you have to decide if you're going to keep funding it with your focus. So then you ask, what's the deliberate friction? It's the space between what happens to you and how you choose to handle it. Think about the last time you got that headline notification that popped up on your phone, or someone said a strongly opinionated comment in a meeting, or you're watching the news and they start talking about something that hit you just right. How long did it take for your blood pressure or your anger to spike? Half a second? Maybe less? In that small fraction of time, something dangerous happens. The gap between perception and reaction completely vanishes. However, we've been conditioned to believe that having an immediate emotional reaction is a sign of passion or moral clarity. That if we aren't instantly outraged, we don't care enough. But the exact opposite is true. When you eliminate taking the time to pause and evaluate what you're hearing, doesn't mean you're being passionate. You're just being highly predictable. You're giving away your most valuable asset, which is your autonomy. And here's something else to ask the reflection in the mirror. Are your reactions towards sad stories as quick and as emphatic as stories that anger you? Remember, it's not about hiding from the world or pretending you don't feel things. It's about building a fence to protect that small amount of time between the stimulus and your response. The moment that you feel that flash of anger or validation, that's actually your cue to stop. If you can't maintain your composure and control while allowing the discomfort to percolate, and then deciding logically how you want to proceed, then you aren't the one running your life. The person or the headline that triggered you is. Every time you fire off that reactive text, make that sarcastic comment, or let your mood be dictated by the narrative, you're losing the game. You're proving that your focus can be bought for the low price of a single sentence or a headline. Real control is the discipline to look at the bait, understand exactly why it was put there, and choose not to bite it. Now, don't get me wrong. There is an emotional comfort in finding something external to blame for where we are in life. When our work objectives don't meet expectations, when our daily routines fall apart, or when the pressure of managing our responsibilities feels overwhelming. Looking for a scapegoat is the easiest escape available. And our modern information landscape is more than happy to hand you one. It'll give you a nicely packaged narrative that points the finger at a broken system, an opposing group, or an ever-changing economic landscape. All of it curated to tell you that none of this is your fault. And we feed on that because it feels validating. It temporarily relieves the pressure of our own shortcomings. Because if the world is rigged, or if a cultural conspiracy is working against us, then our lack of progress isn't a failure of discipline. It's just the byproduct of an inevitable outcome. We trade away our individual control just to buy a little bit of emotional peace of mind. But the moment that you accept that excuse, you surrender your power to change the outcome. Propaganda doesn't just manipulate your opinions. It tricks you into abandoning your own responsibility. If you genuinely believe an outside force is entirely responsible for your frustration, then you also believe that you have to sit back and wait for that outside source to fix it. And it isn't going to. Having self-leadership means looking past the engineered chaos and asking yourself, is it in control of me or do I control it? Because if you let the noise become the reason that you stop executing, you haven't just been misinformed, you've been conquered. At the end of the day, the noise isn't going to stop. The screens will keep flashing the next alert. The headlines will keep seeking your attention. And the world will continue to offer you a million different reasons to get angry, get distracted, point fingers. But none of that's within your control, and it never will be. The only territory you actually own is your focus, your choices, and the standards you do for yourself, not for someone else's validation. Every morning, the choice has to be made about who's actually running the day. The chaotic world coming at you, or the person looking back at you in the mirror. This is about holding yourself to a standard that can't be bought, shaken, or manipulated by outside forces. Build that foundation within yourself. Guard it. Because progress doesn't care what's happening out there. It only cares about what you choose to do next. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes with me. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and keep showing up.